Welcome to Three Nice Things. The podcast has decided we've been so mean to these movies, it's time to say three nice things. You can find more about this show and others like it at our network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Other shows on the network include Is It Classic, Does It Rock, where we pick a band or artist and go through their discography album by album, track by track. There's Previously on X-Men, where we look back on X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. And there's Nostalgia Me This, a trip through nostalgic pop culture. You can share your thoughts on this and upcoming movies by following us on Facebook or Twitter at Nice Things Pod, and please rate, subscribe, and share this show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we're talking about the 2005 film Doom. I'm Eric Mickles, known online as duskvstweak, and with me is Marius, also known as Ensville Gaming, and
Ensville Games. But
Ensville Games.
Hello.
I'm sorry, I started it out wrong. Ensville Games, but that's with a little underscore line.
Yes,
Okay.
It is. Underscore games, because it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, the underscore was important. It was an important choice. And we also have Chris, known online as Monkey of Evil.
How's it going? Good to be here. Excited to talk about some Doom.
And that's Monkey with Evil with like an X at the beginning or end, depending on where you're finding him, right?
Yeah, depending on what was available at the time, I just swapped it around, but
Yeah.
usually it's some variant of Monkey.
If the profile picture is a Doom soldier with monkey ears, you found the right Monkey of Evil.
That would be it.
So, Doom is based on the video game of the same name, and it was filmed on a budget of $60 million. Upon release, the movie went on to make $56 million worldwide, split almost right down the middle between North America
Ouch.
and international audiences, according to Box Office Mojo. So, I mean, it's pretty bad if you can't make your budget back even in North American territories before.
I never looked at like the box office numbers, and while I knew it wasn't like a huge like hit, I never suspected it'd only be like 50.
Yep, it's a bomb.
That's kind of terrible.
Made half
they
its
lost
budget
money
here.
on that.
Mm-hmm. They sure did. And at the time of recording, it has a critic score of 19% on Rotten Tomato, with an audience score of 34%.
Ooh, baby.
Marius, are you a Doom fan? The games. Are you a Doom the games fan?
Well, I mean, when I was young, which
Uh-huh.
I'm not anymore, I'm an old fart. The original, the first Doom, was the game. So I played it. I played my share of it.
Right.
But I haven't actually played any of the following incarnations of the
Not
series.
even like Doom
So,
2, Hell on Earth.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think I ever did.
All right.
And nowadays, I don't really play first-person shooters, so
Right.
that kind of explains that. But I mean, they're cool looking and all, and
Mhm.
I've seen some people stream them, so
Right.
nothing
But-
against them.
But you've never had like a stake in the Doom franchise then?
Not really. I mean, a friend and I were doing some sort of level design, and I did some sprite
okay.
work for him on the original.
Right.
But
yeah.
that's about it.
Okay. When I was younger, my cousin had a copy of Doom 1, or at least the free copy, where you could play a few levels and then you had to order for the rest of it.
Right,
And-
the shareware.
Oh,
yeah, the shareware, back when that was a thing. So I played Doom 1 over at his house, and then a friend lent me a copy of Doom 2, which I played, but I remember using a lot of cheats because I just was not used to a game like that at all. And then I played Doom 3 like fairly recently, only like 5 years ago, way late to the game with that. And then I enjoyed the Doom 2016. I wouldn't say like I'm a hardcore fan of Doom, but whenever I've played a game, I've enjoyed it. But we brought Chris on because Chris, you're the biggest Doom fan I know.
Right. So my history with it starts back like when I was a kid, which is like usually like mid 90s time. I would like watch my dad play the game, not really play it myself because he would play on the PC. And like
Right.
I remember the first time I tried playing, like I had never played a game like on a keyboard, and I was just like, oh, what's this? And did like really bad at it. But that's like one of my earliest gaming memories, and I just kind of stuck with the franchise since. So it's like by far my favorite like gaming franchise. I've played
Right.
like all the main like shooter entries. So the only ones I really haven't touched are like the mobile ones, but that's just because I didn't have a phone that they were on, and just kind of really hard to track down the first mobile game. But oh man, I was so excited for this movie when it came out. Like you can
Monkey of Evil, when he's streaming on Twitch or wherever he's streaming, he tends to celebrate December with a Doom-sember. which is fairly
Wow.
annual
This
tradition.
original game came out December 10th of 1993. So like that whole month, I usually just stream a whole bunch of Doom games.
Yep.
So like, not even understate like just how like into the franchise I am.
Yeah.
So
Chris
yeah,
is
it's gonna be
excited
an
for the Doom 64 coming to the Switch.
Oh my god, I know. It hasn't had like any like. There's been like fan ports and everything, but as far as like a legal just like port of the game hasn't existed since like the original N64 version.
Right.
So it's gonna be interesting to see like how they handle that. You know, Bethesda's been a little shaky with like their classic Doom ports lately, but hey, you know.
So in 2005 though, the newest Doom is Doom 3, and a lot of this movie seems to be based off of like the sense of Doom 3 more than the original one. So like in 2005, Marius, you said you weren't playing Doom, so you didn't play Doom 3.
I did not.
And so Chris, Doom 3 and this movie coming out, your excitement level for Doom in general
Is just like off the chart. So I didn't have a PC that could run Doom 3 at the time. So
I didn't
kind
either,
of, like,
yeah.
stood in the back and like watched people play it, and then had to wait for like the Xbox port to come out. And I had that pre-ordered like months in advance, paid off like well ahead of time. So I loved Doom 3 when it came out. You know, I knew looking at some of like the videos you'd see like online that they were like basing off of Doom 3 and everything. So I was going in like super excited, but yeah, it's definitely not anywhere close to like that classic Doom style. It was definitely more of like that Doom 3 kind of like horror theme going on.
Yeah, I would always like, I remember myself and probably lots of others were measuring if they're getting a new computer, can it run Doom 3? That felt like the benchmark for a while.
Yeah, it's like that was it until that Crisis came out. It was like, hey, can it run Doom 3? And then
it was the Crisis
came, and like it was the new bench.
Yep. It was something. It was all those lighting effects. They were something else. A quick summary of the movie then. If you haven't seen Doom, the original Doom movie in 2005, we're going to spoil it for you. And I think we're also going to spoil the extended cut because I'm pretty sure that's the one we've all watched.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, that's
there's not too much difference in the extended cut here. There's just like a couple of like little extended scenes, but nothing. There's not like any major plot points like
right.
maybe
Yeah. Yeah. There's a Mars base. They've been experimenting with the DNA of old skeletons they found of an ancient race that lived on Mars. Did they name them? I can't remember if they've named this ancient race.
They don't name them.
They just, no.
Yeah. The furthest they go to describing them is that they're like a humanoid species that they found that they have like an extra pair of like chromosomes, which they call like chromosome 24, and this gives them like what they call like superhuman abilities. They think they've eradicated diseases because they're not finding any like viruses, any like negative things. So this is like a perfect society, but then for whatever reason, they're finding like these remains of like the skeletons, like basically posed in like things of like terror, and like something went wrong here on Mars. So the civilization made a teleporter that they call the Ark that sent them to Earth, which is where like humans uncover the teleporter like in the desert of like Nevada.
Yeah, and so something's going wrong. It's a cold open where we just see a scientist running from things that we don't see, and it's all bloody and everything, and then we cut back to Earth, and so a group of elite soldiers have to go to the Mars base through the Ark and seek and destroy and also get back the files, and they find out it's I was about to say demons. It's not. Everybody, they've been testing that extra chromosome on humans.
Yeah, it's important to say that when we say this is based on a game, like most video game movies of like, you know, the past, we use the term based very loosely here. It's one of those things where it's like the game in name only.
Yeah.
Which is like the way a lot of video game movies work.
There's like soldiers, and they're on Mars is really like it for Doom, and maybe like some of the names and references of some weapons or characters, but
yeah, so like really the only thing that kind of ties it in there aside from like the visual look of the creatures is just that the Union Aerospace Corporation is like the corporation running like what they call the Olduvai Research Station, which is the Mars base. They're experimenting kind of with like an archaeological dig, and there's like teleportation between Earth and Mars, and that's kind of the extent of like the Doom connection.
Yeah, but they also have like a weapon called the BFG.
Oh yes, they do. And, talk about that a little later.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's not Whereas the games, they've opened up a portal to hell, and you're actually fighting demons, and you're sometimes going to hell, and you know that's the enemy of the game. It's really just mutated humans.
But as Reaper says, this place is hell.
It does. Yes, that's the best they can do. At one point, Reaper tells his sister, "This place is hell," and I remember watching it for the first time.
Who Reaper is? If we want to go through like a quick introduction of them, so this group of soldiers, Marines. What they say like Marines, but they use soldier throughout, that's a whole nother argument to get into. But we have Sarge, played by The Rock, and he's kind of like the leader of the group.
Was he still going by The Rock in 2005, or was he like pushing for that Dwayne Johnson in 05?
I think he was Dwayne The Rock Johnson still at the time. I don't know if he
was credited. I watched the credits, and he was credited as The Rock.
Really?
Just The Rock, not even Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what he's pushing for at the time. So so he's still very much in the Rock persona in the public, at least for Doom.
Okay, so I actually just looked at the DVD cover here. The cover of the movie has Carl Urban and The Rock, so he's not even like using Dwayne Johnson kind of stuff.
Maybe this is what he did. Maybe he was like, I need a new screen name. Sarge is being played by The Rock, and I guess the only other big name is Carl Urban, who is playing Reaper, who lost his parents on Mars through an avalanche during the argument.
Saying something right there that Carl Urban is one of your big names.
Yeah, well, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, he's done some stuff, sure.
At this point, there's Lord of the Rings, and I remember he was in that Viking movie Pathfinder that I've never seen.
He was also in around this time, like Chronicles of Riddick as well.
Oh yeah, he would be in the Chronicles of Riddick movie. Okay.
All right, yeah.
So kind of to
a year before this.
Yeah, kind of to his point though, like outside of like The Rock and Carl Urban, off the top of my head, I don't know the names of any of the actors of like the other like core group of.
Rosamund Pike goes on to be much more famous from this movie. She's been in Gone Girl. She was in World's End. She was in World's End, Gone Girl. She was in... Oh, I guess at this point, she would have been in Die Another Day, the last Brosnan Bond movie. But yeah, I was watching this with my wife, and I spent the whole time trying to figure out if anybody was anyone. And Porter, the soldier Porter, played Joe Chill in Batman Begins, and that's about where you are in terms of...
You're absolutely right.
It spent me the whole movie. I'm like, what is he from? And I was just trying to imagine him saying something like, say boss, or say something snarky. I was like, oh, he's Joe Chill. But that's the level of celebrity we're at for most of everybody who isn't Carl Urban or The Rock. Reaper is he doesn't want to go there because he's got those bad memories with his parents. But he goes anyway, and it's good because his sister is Rosamund Pike, who is a scientist on Mars and is working on that chromosome project.
Yeah, so when it comes to like the group of soldiers they have here, which is the Rapid Response Tactical Squad, there's not really... They're more just like kind of archetypes of characters rather than just like fully blown characters. So like Sarge by The Rock, he's the we got to get the mission done at any cost type of guy. Reaper's more of like the... like Eric was pointing out to, kind of like the, I got like a dark secret to my past and stuff type of deal. Portman's just kind of like the sleazy pervy one. Duke's like the too cool guy. Destroyer.
Wow, look at this.
Just kind of like silent, well, not too silent, but you know, he's a man of few words and just kind of gets like the action done.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other ones, like Kid is just like the new kind of like overly anxious, just gets added on into like, you know, he's the newbie to the team. And then Goat's the one that's like well-disciplined, but like overly religious. And then
I think that's it.
He doesn't really do much,
Mac,
but he's
you're right.
He's just there. It's kind of like that extra guy to like guard. And then there's not like too much really put into like who they are. It's just,
listen, credit where credit's due. I couldn't have gone past. I was amazed I couldn't even remember Porter's name. So way to go, Chris.
Well, it's not even Porter, it's Portman.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you got like
Portman.
There.
So yeah, but geez Louise, I could not remember half their names afterwards, even while watching it.
Honestly, because remember, this is like 2005, so I think I'm like maybe 7th grade maybe. So like
Okay.
this is still when you go into friends to like laser quest and stuff, and like
Uh-huh.
the whole thing, because there's this scene where they introduce everybody and you
Yep.
learn their names literally, like they put their gun to like the handle and it
Mhm.
says like,
Mhm.
oh,
Oh,
like
yeah.
handle ID Reaper, and it just
Yeah.
always stuck with me, just kind of like that's how you do when you go to laser tags. They give you like the little thing with like
Oh,
the little line of your
yeah.
name, and you put it into the gun, and that's how it keeps scoring stuff.
All
So
right. So the other like big plot thing of this movie though is that they've realized the chromosome that that ancient race has and that they're using on humans. It does one of two things. Either it gives you superpowers or it mutates you into a horrible monster. And what causes it to do that for either one is whether or not your soul is good or your soul is evil. And Rosamund Pike's character kind of points out 10% of the human brain or something isn't mapped.
it's the last 10% of like the human genomes
Yeah,
unmapped.
okay. And so
some
maybe it's
people
the
believe
soul.
that last 10% is the blueprint of the soul. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's
soul science.
So if somebody becomes a monster, that last 10% of their genome was evil. And and that's how they won't do the portals and they won't do the demons, but they'll just be like, some people are definitively medically evil and some are medically good. And then that's really it. That's where they're done trying to explain anything
'cause
about.
They even say like, so the demons from the games are, I guess they're just creatures in this
Mhm.
movie. So the one that's based off the imp, it's the one that kind of goes around and like infects people,
Mhm.
and they make it a point to where it selects who it wants to like infect. It doesn't just randomly
it
go
can
into
tell if if it's gonna turn evil or not, because it doesn't want to give good people superpowers.
Yeah, and considering like almost all the base gets wiped out and like infected, the
Uh-huh.
UAC just must have like some really just kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
are you an evil person? Come work on Mars.
That I buy, that more people are evil than good, I think, and especially in a movie universe like this, it's not too surprising.
Scientists or psychopaths.
Well, I mean, I guess they are doing kind of like human experimentation with like extra like unmapped chromosomes.
Mhm.
I guess.
Well, so once they realize this, the idea is now you have to kill everyone who is infected, especially the ones who are infected and turning into monsters, so they don't go through the arc and come to Earth and then unleash that upon Earth. The Rock's character Sarge, as Chris said, he's very much like mission at all costs. He decides everybody has to be killed. It's not just whether they've transformed or not. Everybody who is possibly infected needs to be killed. And so then he starts to become the villain, which at the time, in 2005, was kind of a big deal that The Rock turns out to be the bad guy.
Yeah, because he was just kind of like the go-to, just like action, like the new action hero for like the mid 2000s, coming off like his little wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, he played the Scorpion King in 2001 in The Mummy Returns, but then when the Scorpion King movie
got like his
came
standalone
out,
movie where he's like
the
the main character and like the hero.
Yep. So it definitely was kind of like a twist at the time that he wasn't the hero of the movie.
Unless you saw the interview with like Jon Stewart where he flat out just says like, actually, I turned into the bad guy in this movie. It's like,
I missed that. I missed that. But then that's the gist.
Yeah. And unlike this,
Carl Urban is our hero.
Scorpion King Rock was really the pinnacle of terrible CGI for a while.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then they still decided they had the balls to CGI The Rock's face in this movie when he was transforming. I was like, didn't you learn anything? There's that one scene where he's just kind of angry and mutated, but he's still very much The Rock. And I thought we had learned our lesson, but I guess not.
And, it's interesting you say that because for the most part, they use like a lot of like practical like effects, like with the exception of like maybe like the Pinky Demon design. A lot of them are like just practically done. So it's kind of weird for like The Rock, how it's just kind of like, oh, we're just going to edit his.
Yeah, I guess they just really wanted to make him look scary.
It did look kind of off, but at least it wasn't like a fully terrible CGI.
Yeah, and it was just like the beginning phases of him turning, so it didn't look like really like terrible and stuff. And it was really only there maybe like a minute.
It was a very quick blink and you miss it scene where he's like doing that grimace, and then it's harder to tell. I wouldn't be surprised if there was very minimal CGI at that part. So Rosamund Pike uses the genome on her brother Carl Urban to give him superpowers to basically fight The Rock, who's gone nuts. No, actually, we wouldn't have seen The Rock at this point, right? We think The Rock dies at one point. And so,
right, because
we
the
don't
rocket's
know that
dragged
he's
away.
infected.
Yeah,
Or,
we
The
think-
rocket's dragged away, and they just know that like all things are going to hell here, and
Yep.
Reaper is
Oh.
injured. So
Yeah.
her gamble is basically like, "Hey, we know this will cure you, might turn you into a monster, but she says, you're my brother. I know you.
Yep.
You'll be good."
And
she pretty much gambles on him being a good person, and she
Yep.
does it to save his life because
Yep.
she says he'll bleed to death if
Yep.
she doesn't. So,
And
But-
even Reaper is kind of hesitant about it. He
Yeah.
gives her the gun and says, "Hey, if things start going south, one bullet to the head, one to the heart, just to be safe. Don't
Yeah.
risk it." But she's just
Mhm.
confident she won't
Yeah.
do that. And
yeah.
It pays-
And my wife and I are sitting on the couch watching this, and we're like, take the gun, say okay. Even if you have faith in him, you
Yeah,
believe he's a
I
good
know.
person, just say okay.
Yeah, I have 98% faith in you. And then, good news though, Reaper is a good guy. He gets superpowers. We go into the famous first-person mode, and then he finds the Rock. They have a big superhero, supervillain kind of punch-out on Earth. They've gone to Earth now, which I thought was kind of weird that they go to Earth so quickly. It kind of seemed like you'd want to save that for the sequel, but maybe they saw the writing on the wall there. They're just in like the underground base on Earth,
Well,
so they're not
it's,
on Earth.
the whole thing there at the end is that they're on Earth and that there's like this emergency quarantine
Yeah.
lockdown. So they're trying to Reaper's trying to basically like, "Hey, we've got to stop Sarge before this quarantine ends," and
Yeah.
then things can like really, like get into the whole like, oh, hell on Earth type of deal. But
Mhm.
that's kind of like the whole last act is just like, "Hey, we've got like X amount of time. We've got to stop this situation."
So Karl Urban he sends the Rock back to Mars with a grenade. It blows him up in the base, and him and his sister head up to Earth, and everything's okay. And then Trent Reznor music starts playing,
Yeah.
which I guess is a nice homage because he was supposed to do the music for Doom 3, but it didn't work out. Marius, had you ever seen this movie before, this podcast?
Yeah, I saw it when pretty much when it came out, I think.
In theaters?
Oh goodness, no.
Okay, on DVD.
Yeah.
All right. And at that time, your response was?
I remember thinking it was pretty dumb, and I didn't care for the first person
Okay.
segment.
All right.
We got my friends and I were like, "Oh, that's kind of awful," but haha, that's kind of funny. Can it stop now?
Mm-hmm. You probably haven't watched it since this podcast.
I hadn't. No.
Okay. I know for myself, I didn't see it in theaters, but I did rent it probably like 2006 or 2007 I would have watched it, and I was with my friend Glenn, and we were having a good time like as it was beginning, but then we kind of felt the steam just leave the whole room because we're like it got to a point where we felt like it wasn't even bad enough for us to have like fun with it. We got excited at the first person scene, unlike Marius, and then when it was over, we were just like, that was really bad. And I haven't watched it since, but I rented it from Blockbuster the first time, and it was the extended cut. And then when I watched it for this podcast, I forgot to get it from the library, so I had to rent it again off of Amazon Prime. So I've now spent money renting this movie twice, and
Good job.
and extended edition both times. So I was like, all right, this is fine. Every time I watch this movie, I'll pay like $4, I guess, as punishment. And Chris, you saw this in theaters.
I did. I saw it. I don't know if it was like the opening. I don't know if it was like one of those like early like Thursday showings or not, but I know I saw it like opening weekend. It had to have been that Friday because I saw it after school with like my parents and stuff. And so this is still like, I'm just like, dude, they're going to do a straight up adaptation. I'm so excited. And like my soul is like, just like as an adaptation, terrible adaptation. Like I remember leaving the theater. I was like really upset over like really dumb things. Like why is the BFG blue and not green and things like that? It's like most kids do. But
yeah, you latch onto that stuff, sure.
yeah, it's just one of those things where like horrible adaptation, but somehow it's just like a kind of like B-movie sci-fi action flick. I really don't mind the movie. Like I got it on DVD still. For this podcast was probably like the 5th or 6th time I've seen it, so I'm pretty familiar like with the movie like in general.
I think I have to watch Street Fighter the movie again for the next recording of this podcast, And I wouldn't be
Oh, boy.
surprised if I'm kind of in the same boat with that movie as you are with Doom Monkey, because I remember watching Street Fighter and having like those same like, well, this is different, but at the same time being like, let's watch Street Fighter. You know, it's you as a kid, you know something's wrong with the thing that you're enjoying, but there's still something you like about it, and you can't pinpoint
Yeah,
it.
it's just one of those things. Like, as an adaptation, I absolutely despise this movie as just kind of like B-movie sci-fi action. It's okay.
Now, this was something I was amused to find out. How many times have you bought a physical copy of Doom the movie, Chris?
Actually, only once.
Only once? I thought you had the new Blu-ray.
No, I was considering buying
Oh, okay.
it for this to kind of like upgrade, but it's just like Blu-ray. Like the cheapest I was able to find it was like $10-12,
Right.
and
At that point, wait for the
I
double
don't watch
pack.
this movie enough to really like I said, it's been out for what, like 14 years. I mean, I've seen it 6
Yeah.
times. That's
It's
a lot, but not enough to like, oh, I'm gonna watch it in HD all the time. You know?
Hey, let's talk about some of the actors who dodged the bullet with Doom. So, according to Screen Rant, Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally attached to the film, but this was in 1999, and plans for the film were scrapped due to the Columbine high school shooting at the time. Schwarzenegger and the movie were just scrapped completely until this version of the movie, and Schwarzenegger wouldn't be attached with it again. Vin Diesel was offered the role for the 2005 film, but he turned it down to do the pacifier. And I can't. This movie, I think, must have been before The Rock did the Tooth Fairy, because I remember like Vin Diesel and The Rock were
straight
following
up like action, like
like
at this point in time.
Yeah.
As far as like Vin Diesel like choosing this for the pacifier, I mean,
I think people like the pacifier.
Is there really like a worse choice in that option? Like, is there really any like, oh, his career would have done so much better had he done like, and he's recovered just fine. So
I think at the time, I mean, he would have been coming off of, like you said, Chronicles of Riddick. That's like 2004 or something, right?
Yeah, but like Pitch Black had like a lot of like kind of like hype around it, like afterwards,
Right.
and then Chronicles
wasn't so great, yeah.
So it's not like he was like killing it, and then like the pacifier came along.
Right,
so.
sure. Yeah, both him and The Rock had around the same time, I feel, with each other's careers, like in the same kind of rough spot. I guess in a way you could say Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, also dodged a bullet because he was offered the lead role of Reaper. But in his own words at the 2005 Comic-Con, he said, "When I first read the script and read it for John, after I read it, I thought, wow, John is a great character and of course the hero of the movie. But for some reason, I was drawn more to Sarge. I thought Sarge was, to me, more interesting and had a darker side." And apparently he also...
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not, but apparently he wouldn't be in the movie unless he could play Sarge. In an interview with IGN, John mentions the interviewer of IGN asked him if he is jealous of Karl Urban for getting the first person scene. And Johnson mentions, if given the choice between getting the first person scene or wielding the BFG, he would take the BFG anytime. Another reason why he chose to play Sarge. Apparently, he even got to take 2 BFGs home.
I mean, he made the right call.
I suppose so. The director, Andrzej Bartkowiak. Nope, I've said that wrong.
It's like Andrei Bartkowiak.
Yeah, the director of this movie, he didn't learn his lesson from doing Doom. He went on to direct Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Oh, okay then.
That is one I have not seen yet.
But he
Me
actually
neither.
did. But he did some better things before that.
I guess it depends on how you feel about Cradle to the Grave. Good?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I
he
didn't see
did
it. I
Romeo
can't
Must
comment on
Die.
it.
Wasn't that a Jet Li film? That seems like it was pretty popular.
Yeah, I recall.
Okay, yeah, but
At the time,
Yeah.
it was.
he did this, and then
Pretty fun,
4 years later, he did Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. Not learning, just giving. But okay, so in an interview with Kikizo, John Carmack himself said, "I intentionally stayed away completely out of the process, so I was able to get a fair first impression at the theater. I liked it. Nobody expects a video game movie to be an Oscar material, but I thought it was a solid action movie with lots of fun nods to the gaming community."
Kind of like my exact thoughts on it. I mean, like if you're trying to get me to say like, oh, is it a good movie? No, but I mean,
Man,
it's an.
the scientist we first see in this movie is Dr. Carmack, and They say the name Carmack so many times. I felt like I was
so
going.
many.
Yeah, we gotta find Carmack. Where's Carmack? I don't know. Have you seen Carmack? It's just I get it.
You're a Carmack counter.
You're homaging John Carmack, one of the creators of Doom, but at a certain point, it's driving me mad.
That was one of the devs they got in there. The other one was Dr. Willits, based off of id Software. I don't know what his position was at the time. I know he eventually went on to be like one of like the lead creative like designers I did, but it was based on Tim Willits.
But no John Romero.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, he had fallen away from id at that time. I think they were just kind of like referencing people
for id.
in the company at the time.
Time Magazine put this on their top 10 worst video game movies of all time, but that seems like how hard is that list? Make a 10 best video game movies of all time list, you cowards.
Mortal Kombat. And that's it.
Yeah, it's like I don't think you can really make like a
top 10
maybe
best.
maybe top 3 worst would be like a little more difficult.
Yeah,
but
that would be
you can
more
make like a top
reasonable,
10 list of like worst video games.
At that point, you just made a list.
It's like just pick the names out of the bag, and people would probably be like, "Yeah, that's a solid list."
Yeah. So there were plans for a sequel, but they were squashed pretty quickly due to the box office failure. And at the time we are recording this, the reboot film Doom Annihilation is set to release straight to video in just 2 weeks. So we'll mention it at the end of this episode. We'll talk about Doom Annihilation, but I foresee an episode of Three Nice Things where we talk about Doom Annihilation a little bit more. Who knows? Maybe it will surprise us. Enough of that. It's time to say our Three Nice Things about Doom 2005, though. Yeah, Marius, when I asked if you would be on this episode, your response was, "I hate you." So why don't you go first? Why? Well, if you hate me so much, why don't you say a nice thing about this movie?
I mean, I said, okay, I'll do it, I guess. And and I did say I hate you when I realized I was actually preparing to watch the Doom movie. And of course, my memories of the movie were probably much like 13 years old or so. I probably watched it like a year after it came out because it was pretty new on DVD here.
I have to tell you, I didn't remember. Like, I remembered like a couple of things, but so much of it was completely gone from my memory. I even forgot that.
Oh yeah.
I completely forgot that Rosamund Pike was his sister. Like, in my memory, they were estranged husband and wife. But they say sister and brother so much in this movie. I guess I just...
Yeah, they really hammer the point home. To the point
where
one time, Duke is straight up like, "Hey, how'd you let her get away?" He goes like, "She's my sister."
I gotta tell you, in the 14 years since I've watched this movie, I had just completely blanked out on all that. So...
Okay, that actually leads well into the top nice thing on my list.
Okay.
Which I was going to start with a simple one, but I'll just go into this one as a nice segue from what you just said, because I just missed that part, I guess, while watching this movie again today. 10 minutes after they do the whole spiel about it, I totally forgot that they were supposed to be brother and sister, and in my head she was his ex, you know.
Right.
So I was making a joke to the wife, like something, because she's his ex, and then it turns. And then they say she says he's my brother. One of the many times that gets hammered down. And I'm like, oh, right. That's right. They're not a couple, which happens to be one of my three nice things. There is, in fact, and this is the one the wife commented on that helped me. There's no like forced love interest in this movie. They didn't like push a romantic relationship. Grim has a sister, and I mean, you mean
Reaper?
Is it Duke?
Reaper.
Yeah, Reaper. Yeah,
but his last name's Grim.
His last name is Grim. Okay.
Yeah, and hence Reaper, as in Grim Reaper.
Yeah, all right. There we go.
They comment on had you
watched and to be fair, one of the not so nice things about the movie, I will say, is the completely arbitrary use of call signs versus real life names, because they just switch back and forth.
No, but this is a cool elite squad. They have to have cool names.
Yeah, but then they don't use them half the time. Anyway, I like that, even though, who was it, Duke, who kind of flirted with her, he wanted to get with her, and then said that she would be doing him a service. It was her human duty or something to have sex with him. But that was like basically you have this one space marine, hitting on her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the closest we see to any sort of like romance blossoming. So, there's no forced Hollywood romance in this thing.
Yeah.
They don't try to like push that sort of connection in any way, like toss a lady and they're two damsel in distress kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I like that they got the brother sister thing going on, sure. And yes, I forgot instantly and thought that they were a couple, but the fact that they didn't shoehorn a couple into the plot, such as it is, I think that was a good thing.
The flirting Duke, right? That was his name.
Yeah, that was Duke.
Yeah, he was definitely that.
He's the guy that's like too cool, just kind of like always like kind of upbeat, chilling.
He's got a lot of
mind
entendres.
if I just go into like my first nice thing to kind of piggyback?
Hit it, Chris.
So basically, kind of like what I was saying earlier, how they don't really focus so much on the character, just like, oh, this is like the archetype, like Portman's the sleazy perv and stuff like that. There's never really too many natural sounding like dialogue in the film because it just sounds like two archetypes talking to each other.
Right.
But I will say with like the flirting scene between Duke and Sam, and anytime those two are like on screen together, like I actually thought those scenes, like their chemistry was actually really well done. To his point over there, they don't try and like force it into like a relationship. It's more like a friendly flirting, and she just kind of like immediately rejects him, but kind of like in a playful manner almost. But it seems almost like natural, and they're definitely like the best like pairing of any two characters like on screen. So I enjoyed every time they were like talking to each other, or anytime they were just sharing it, because it just seemed more natural and not just like kind of like, oh, this is the forced exposition between these two people.
This is the two Marines talking about like, are you high? Do you want to get high? Well, I guess I'm gonna piggyback off of yours, Chris's, and keep going. I was hoping it would work out where I could get away by making this all my nice things, but unfortunately, I don't think the three actors are good enough to equal a nice thing individually. I don't even think someone as reliably entertaining as The Rock is. He can't carry this movie, but I feel like our three leads, as you will, The Rock, Karl Urban, and Rosamund Pike, they are a better caliber of leads than a 2005 adaptation of Doom deserves. And they're good without ever really being great, but kind of like Chris was saying, Rosamund Pike is really good in those scenes, and I don't hate her interactions with Karl Urban. The whole like Karl Urban's like sad past about his parents is not great or really relatable or seems to have any effect on them. I think they all at least exude a presence that makes them more watchable than if they had just gotten nobody off the street. The rest of the Marine squad is a bunch of different character actors or people you'll never see again in another movie. I think it's just weird to think that at one point we had somebody, this kind of level in this kind of movie. But I appreciated the three leads together, I guess.
They played well off of each other.
Yeah, they just it's like how
which, considering they have the most screen time, that's really all we can ask for here.
Yeah, it reminds me of like how every now and then you get lucky where like the Tomb Raider movies aren't great, but you also got an Oscar winner playing Lara Croft in the newest one. Every now and then these video game movies, they don't get to that certain level of being good and or great, but they still get some actors that you're like, I'll watch this.
I kind of want to coast off of how we've been going. And
this is so natural. Look at this.
The casting. Yeah. We got the flow here.
Yeah.
I kind of generously put down that the casting is actually pretty well done. But as we've talked about, like apart from the lead trio, most of the characters aren't even characters. They're basic. They're archetypes. But I think I mean, even if they don't have a lot of dialogue and they just stand around holding a gun or whatever, the people playing the character archetypes, as it were, they do a good job. I especially thought I can't say it's a nice thing, but Portman.
He's at least the most expressive.
I thought I mean, he probably put his everything into that job. I don't really know Richard Brake, the actor. I don't really know him from anywhere, and I probably won't know him if I see him again, unless it's the exact same part. But he was the sleazy, gross perv guy with the drugs. Like, basically all the nasty things, that the bad boy, as it were, without being the cool kind of bad boy. He just cranked it up to, if not 11, at least a 10.5. He looks slimy, like literally physically greasy, so toothy that if they could have gotten Busey for this, you know, they
sure, maybe that's one of the things. He looks like a Busey.
But I think he plays the part well. And ironically, the wife and I were like, why is the perv the one making sense sometimes when he's like, we gotta get back up and stuff, you know? And like, they should, when they see how this is going, you know, they still have control of the airlock. They're like, oh, it's under lockdown. You know, they could send in like a team of 50 guys who actually wear helmets and just torch the entire thing.
A second minigun.
Bomb. Yeah. But anyway, I think they all, to stay on my point here, they all did pretty okay in the roles. Destroyer got a good fight scene, you know, with one of the mutant alien demon things, whatever. And he got to be the big burly dude, which, you know, he didn't do a lot, but really Portman, I think he really shone in that part of just greasy, gross guy.
Yeah.
And he's so creepy.
Like, The Rock is good, and he
is, yeah.
He's entertaining, but maybe the movie itself, there's something about it where I thought for sure my nice thing was going to be The Rock is good in this movie, but I felt like there was stuff keeping him from being. Maybe it's because he's playing the bad guy. He can't be like.
It is interesting because
he can't be more charismatic or something.
As you gave us the backstory on how The Rock ended up in this, I mean, if this had been a Schwarzenegger movie, it would have been very different. I think it wouldn't have been a better movie. If it had been Vin Diesel.
If this was 99, Schwarzenegger was attached to just play like Doom guy, just like the nameless soldier. So I don't.
Yeah, and also like the entire like aesthetic and like the setting of the movie would have been different because like Doom 3 came out in 2003, 2004, somewhere around there. So like in 99, that wouldn't even have like the whole like just look of the movie would have been like completely different.
Yeah, a lot more red.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, I guess going into my sorry.
No, if I could piggyback off of Ends because of this.
Well, because I was going to piggyback off of something he said.
Okay, go ahead, keep going.
We actually brought up the Destroyer fight with like this movie's version of like the Hell Knight, like in that electrified prison cell. I thought, like, as short as that action sequence was, I thought that was just incredibly cool looking. And if like the rest of the movie had action like that, I think it would have been a lot better. But just the way how you're in like this dark pit and the walls are electrified and he sends the cart going across the wall to like send the sparks up and light it up, and the lighting and the feel of it, like it was like a very kind of like intimate, just brawl, like action scene. And I wish the movie had like more of that.
Chris, that was my second nice thing. The pit. The pit scene.
It was pretty good.
I think it's because it's one of the only action scenes in this movie with any sense of actual, like, style. It's a set piece, whereas everything else is just, like, in the hall shooting.
And instead of just, like, shooting at things, like I said, like, he, like, okay, so he's in a dark pit, he finds a way to light it up. Oh, they knocked the pipe down, he wedges the Hell Knight against the wall with that. Like, they're getting really creative with what they're doing in that confined space, and it's not just like, oh, we're going to shoot at the thing and miss, and then just have to address that.
And not just that, but, like, Destroyer, like, sticks the Hell Knight. That's what it is, you said? It's a Hell Knight?
Well, that's the design they
I found a lot of the designs of the monsters to be, like, I guess that looks like something from Doom. But the Hell Knight, he sticks the Hell Knight, like, into the wall so he gets electrified. And Destroyer's, like, almost out of the pit. He's climbing up that chain that's just hanging there. And then he still gets pulled down. And so it's, like, it's pretty, like, he has a pretty brutal death because... Unlike, say, Portman, who's just, like, in that bathroom stall and just gets torn apart, or somebody who just gets their head knocked off, Destroyer, like, fights one of these things into fisticuffs, almost, and almost makes it out. And so it's just, it's a lot more brutal than anything else. It's a lot more, since it's, like, like Chris has said, a lot of this stuff is practical. It has a lot more oomph than just watching.
He's not fighting like a cheesy like CGI, just like, oh, it's not really there, so he's kind of like pantomime a fight. Like he's actually like, there's something to interact with. There's a lot more weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's razzling a guy in a rubber suit.
Right? Yeah, so it struck me as like, this scene seems too good to be in this movie right now.
Because there's nothing else that even like comes like close to like what they did with that. I mean, like they put a lot of effort into the first person shooter scene, but that was more of just like, hey, this is like the gimmick of the movie, and while I really enjoyed it, it just doesn't compare.
There's no clever thinking.
Shooter scene is neat,
right?
But I thought the destroyer fight in that pit was actually like good.
They in this movie, they have nano walls that phase out so you can go through them and then go back and become walls. And it seems like you could make a pretty cool like action scene with that, but they don't really use that other than just like they trap one of the monsters. They trap Carmack in the wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Carmack, everybody, Carmack.
Where's Carmack?
So we all like the pit scene.
Yeah, it was a solid scene. I actually thought about putting it on my list by itself.
Okay.
That was,
and it was well shot. It was well. I mean, the way they used the darkness and the lighting and the sheer physicality of it compared
with
to
the
like,
lightning,
running down halls and shooting.
Yeah. Visually, it feels like all it's missing.
Monitor flail. You know, the way he grabs the cables and just swings a monitor over his
like
head.
A ball and chain. Yeah,
it was fantastic.
I think visually, all that scene is really missing to feel like that kind of scene is like maybe the sprinkler system on at the same time, so like everything's also being rained on. Do that, and you've hit every note for that scene. And it's funny because that scene just goes to Destroyer, the guy who like I didn't remember his name until Chris said it. It doesn't go to Karl Urban or The Rock. They get that dumb, punchy jumping scene at the end of the movie.
Yeah, really. That was the only other real fight scene in the movie is them fighting with superpowers.
Well, like Chris said, they're going off of Doom 3 for this, and Doom 3 was a lot more like slow paced. There was a lot of like dark corridors, and you couldn't see things, and things would just like jump out. And so, like, this movie doesn't even have a lot of scenes where the soldiers are just mowing down these monsters because everybody's being killed off in like this suspenseful jump scare way. So there's not a lot of just like straight up action.
Yeah, like if you had taken like a lot of the shoot at the monsters in the hallway scenes and just like mod that into like Doom 3, like it would fit.
All right, so that was all our second nice thing. Well, wow, all right. We're cruising. Last nice thing then, Marius.
Here's my simple one that I just jotted down as a simple cop-out, I guess, that I was going to open with. Visually, it's not terrible.
Okay.
I gotta say, I mean, like Monkey mentioned, they do use a lot of practical effects here.
Right.
Which, I gotta say, that helps. The sets look okay, you know, the whole aesthetics of it, pretty decent, you know. Like the rubber suit monsters and stuff, I recognize some of the designs, even though I'm not a big Doom guy like we talked about. Not that Doom guy, but you know. But I think in general, the way they went with things visually, it looks okay. The sets and everything, and the use of practical effects, so it doesn't look. There's not too much bad CGI in the movie, you know. I think that they're better off for it.
I was reading somewhere something they wanted to put in the movie. Maybe it was more monsters from the film or something from the games, but they had both time and money constraints from all of that. It could look worse. It doesn't. Yeah,
I mean, it's what, a 14-year-old movie now, and all I remembered of it was like there was a first-person scene, and I remembered the one thing getting stuck in the nano wall. That's all I remembered. Beyond that, you know, I was like, how bad is this going to look? And I was actually pleasantly surprised that it didn't hurt my eyeballs.
This movie, unless they told you, I feel like you would not know this movie. This movie's on Mars. It's set on Mars, but that does not play into it at all.
I mean, the most Martian view you get of anything is in the beginning with the Universal logo. Instead of being our planet, it's Mars.
There's one scene where Karl Urban is looking outside and you see like the red, but I'm just like, how hard is it? Couldn't you just like film Nevada and then color it red?
And that whole scene too was like kind of weak. It was like Sarge comes in and is like, "Is this where it happened?"
Yeah.
Just like, "Oh, moving on," and it was like,
Yeah.
"Stop trying to shoehorn in the story thing, you know.
But
we don't care if you're on Mars."
I guess as an underground base movie, yeah, it doesn't look terrible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a bunker, a science bunker, you're not going to be able to tell if you're on Mars or Earth. Like,
Right.
So this is actually going to be one of my first ones, and then conveniently, like we all just like naturally flowed into like the same nice things, which was pretty cool. But as far as like the tactics they use when going throughout the base, I actually thought that was one area for whatever reason they put a lot of neat like detail into. And if you've ever seen any like the behind the scenes stuff, they actually did send like the core group of guys.
Yeah, they had to do training.
They did like the tactical training with like the Marine Corps and stuff. So the way like the formations they use, the way they like mark off X's on the walls to places they've been. If they go and re-enter areas, they mention it. It actually seemed more like they were doing a thorough sweep. Instead of just like a generic kind of like, oh, go down the hallway, we're in this room, and go here, and not really have like a good sense of like where things were. And also like the tactics of like, okay, you all are going to go here and we're going to funnel anything we see down towards that way so you can take care of it. And yeah, they did well with like that sort of like detail and stuff. So I kind of enjoyed how consistent they were with it throughout the entire movie.
Yeah,
that's actually a good point. Yeah.
All right, it seems like the podcast right now is of two minds, because Marius doesn't like it, and Chris has talked about it quite a bit, but it wasn't on your nice things. I had to put it on my nice things because I needed 3 nice things. But it has the first person scene that I think this movie's probably most famous for.
I felt like that was cheating to put it on my 3 nice things.
Okay, well then I'm glad.
I went out of my way to find like other ones to do it, because like the 2 I had off the top of my head just would have been, of course, the first person scene, because I really like that, the destroyer thing. The other 2 I kind of came to the conclusion when I was doing like the rewatch of it, but yeah, that would have been, but I felt like that was just like the obvious like nice thing that most people, when they say like, oh, I hated that movie, but that scene was cool.
Yeah, well, I had to pick it. On this rewatch, I was less impressed with it. I felt like it seemed to move very slowly. And I think the other hindrance of like everything I'm like, I don't remember ever moving this slow in any Doom game, let alone most games. But also a hindrance it has is the monster design. I mean, at one point you're just fighting, they're just shooting at humans who have recently been infected. So it's just a zombie movie at times. And so, like, one of the people that you see get taken down in the first person mode, I think it's just like a zombie with long hair and a tracksuit. And it
pretty much.
Yeah, and so a lot of those don't look great. But I remember the first time watching this, I remember the trailer. I remember seeing the trailer in theaters, and they were showing clips of it through interspersed, and it made you think that the Doom movie was going to have multiple scenes, like that was just going to be a regular occurring thing, this first person view. And then when it wasn't showing up when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's disappointing, maybe that was just for trailers. And then it had that extended scene, and for a while I had that scene on my YouTube like favorite. I would just go back and watch it because I'm like, oh, this is cool. And it's cool in a way that this movie doesn't try to adapt Doom the game at all, and when it does, it doesn't do it very well. But it's a nice kind of homage, reference points to like, we know this game is a first person shooter and what it's about and what you like, so we're gonna put in a scene. And I read that it took 3 months to plan, 2 weeks to shoot, so that's they put some effort in it. And apparently they put a camera on Carl Urban and like marks on his hands and everything, so he had to do it. So they put effort into it, and it still doesn't look terrible, even though I was a little less enthused about it this time. I think
kind of to your point, when you do see like a lot of them, he's like, oh, he's just shooting like the guys in the lab coats running at him. As much as I love the practical designs of like the creatures in the movie, the first person scene where it's just like the imps running down the hallway, you do get to see how kind of like clunky the movement is because it is practical and they have like limited like mobility and stuff.
Yeah.
You do kind of start to see the weakness kind of like peeking through there.
Because that's when the monsters become CGI. The one that he throws a grenade, he throws down a motion grenade or a proximity mine on the floor and the monster jumps. Is that not a CGI one?
I know the part where it, like, obviously where it blows up is, I don't know that the part upstairs where he's holding the chainsaw. I want to say
the
that's
chainsaw,
practical.
Yeah. And okay, so that's
I know
the
the Pinky Demon part is CGI.
Yeah. So the Pinky Demon probably looks most like something from the Doom game, I feel like. But even then,
Hell Knight's pretty
okay.
Pretty spot on.
But then
like Pinky Demon.
But then the Carl Urban in the first person mode, he picks up a chainsaw to fight the thing, which that's a bit too gross for me. But at the same time, like, yeah, a chainsaw is a weapon you have in all of that. Is that a scene too that got cut down? Because
it's longer in the extended version.
Because I think the YouTube video I watched is from the theatrical release, and it always seemed like
the fight with the fight with the Pinky thing's longer in the extended cut.
So that, I guess, shows that somebody involved had things they liked about Doom and wanted to share about Doom, I guess. It feels more true to the game, I
guess, yeah. I mean, they got references, clearly, so yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't have a movie like Hardcore Henry if something like Doom hadn't even done that 2 or 3 minutes.
That is fair, yeah. I was going to say, if you want to see a whole movie of first person, go watch Hardcore Henry.
But yeah, now you have a movie like Hardcore Henry that just makes that scene in Doom obsolete, just in terms of like speed and everything else. So, but did that excite you, Chris, when you were in theaters? I mean, you were having a bad time.
I mean, that was one of like the standout things.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, that was like really cool about it. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I'm glad is like in some of the earlier trailers, there was like a voiceover like there saying,
yes,
like,
I remember that
enemy approaching like from the left and stuff. And I was just all like, I hope they don't put that in the movie.
It was like it was like a woman's voice. It was similar to the one that said their call names
narration at the beginning. Yeah,
it says their call names at the computer.
On their weapons. I remember seeing that in the trailer, and I was just all like, I'm so glad of all the things they decided to take out. That was one of them, because that like, first of all, how would that have worked? Because that was working then. Every other time a monster sneaks up on them in the movie just would have been like, wait, what?
Yep. You know what? My wife, she liked this. Kendra, who has been on this podcast before, she thought The Rock was pretty good if she could have picked a nice thing. In fact, I was having trouble. She's like, I got 3 nice things to say about the movie. So I think she enjoyed it more than I did. But it has that like B-C level action vibe about it that you can kind of forgive sometimes.
But you know what? On the whole, I kind of enjoyed it. It was entertaining.
Did you?
It wasn't.
So I'm surprised. All that aggression about me trying to get you on this episode, and it turns out
I thought I'd hate it more than they did. Yeah, turns out I was entertained, and I mean, The Rock is always good, even though it was kind of weird seeing him be pretty much not have his trademark charm. The Rock is a charming gentleman. Right. We know this.
It's one of those things where if you don't let him do what he's good at, you kind of wonder why you got him in the first place.
Mm-hmm. But he did well as Sarge.
But he has that line in this movie where he says, "I'm not supposed to die," because he's The Rock. So I mean, yeah, that was that's a slightly clever twist that I think probably worked to the movie's favor. It made it interesting. Marius and Chris, are you going to watch Doom again?
I don't know if I'm going to be like rushing to watch it again, but I imagine at some point I would. I wouldn't be again.
And now you'll have...
it might happen. I'm not going to seek it out. But
Well, because when we were talking about... when you were on here for Alien Resurrection, Marius, you were like, I'm never watching this movie again.
I see no reason to.
Yep. But Doom is more likely for you there.
I guess. I mean, I'm not... If it's... I can't imagine a situation in which I'll end up watching it, but I won't run away screaming if it happens. It wasn't as awful as I thought. Even the first person scene, I just wanted it to be over because visually I felt it was kind of ugh. But there were some fun parts, some fun little kills and stuff, and like I chuckled at points during that scene too. I just felt like the whole 8 extra minutes of the extended version kind of went into that scene, but all in all, Doom 2005 movie, not as bad as I thought.
Okay, I feel like it's one of those movies though, when you're watching it, you almost instantly forget everything that you just saw. And it's like one of those movies where you're only aware of what's happening at the moment. And once it's over, you completely forget about what you've just seen.
That seems accurate.
At Nightcrest Comic, they sent in 3 nice things. On Twitter or Facebook, I'm always like, can you say 1 nice thing about this movie? But some people will take the challenge and say 3.
They just go like above and beyond.
Yep. At Nightcrest Comic says they thought it was a great use of costumes. At first I didn't get that, but now you guys were talking about the practical effects. I mean, that's what they're talking about, the monster costumes. I hope. I don't really see like the Rock's costume being that impressive, but yeah, the practical monster effects were better looking than they had any right to be. Wonderful explanation to why the main character has his abilities. I think that might be about the 10% of the genome is soul,
which I guess that he's.
Yeah. Apologies if I got that one wrong, but then also always great to see The Rock act.
It kind of is. I will say though, I'm pretty sure we all heard it, so I'm pretty sure that's accurate. She did say 10% of the human genome is unmapped and stuff, which I'm pretty sure is factually incorrect, because I think the Human Genome Project had like 99% covered before this movie was released.
Well, it's like that movie Lucy is basing the movie about how 10% of the brain, we don't use 10% of the brain, and people like that's not true. But then the whole movie is just about her becoming like a god because of that one concept that's not true. I gotta ask both of you then. I know what the answer for Chris, but we should still get it on record. Excited for Doom Annihilation, the direct to DVD / Blu-ray / VOD release.
I mean, I'm going to watch it day one, but like I said, I'm just like, it's just one of those things, like I'm like a huge Doom fan, so I just feel almost like compelled to watch it. And whether I'm going to think like, wow, this is terrible, or at best I anticipate it being like this one, like, hey, that was all right. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be there to.
Marius, what about you? I mean, you just watched Doom. It's going to be fresh in your mind.
I don't know that'll matter. I only learned that this movie is going to exist when you mentioned it before, when I signed up for this. Yeah. I am looking at it on IMDb now to see
nobody's in
anyone
it. It's very much direct to DVD. Yeah.
Apologies, Louis Mandylor, Amir Chadha Patel.
Yeah. Apologies if
all you people.
You are people, but we haven't heard.
The most of them do have pictures on their IMDb profiles,
hey,
so
that's pretty good.
That's a bigger ratio of picture profiles than the 2005 movie. But am I excited? And no, do I care? No, I don't. I gotta say, I might watch it.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I hear something about it.
If the movie turns out to be god awful and we add it to the list, I'll make sure the 3 of us come back from Doom Annihilation.
There's a character called Captain Hector Savage. Okay, I'm sold.
I think I'm excited for it because 1, I'm doing this podcast now, but 2, I mean, now at this point I would have played more Doom games after seeing Doom 2005 than I had before I've seen Doom 2005. So at this point, I think I got some more stuff to like catch if they reference things,
yeah, that's something.
And it looks like at the trailer, you hear somebody say they've opened up a portal to hell. It looks like there's actual hell demon. So
no, yeah. So this one, the one thing I will say, like before it comes out, like objectively, it will be a better adaptation than Doom 2005.
Yeah, it looks like it's really going for it.
Movie or not, that's completely up for debate. They've already straight up mentioned that portal to hell. They've called them demons already. There is this scene in actually like the more recent kind of like trailer for it, which was only like maybe 30 seconds longer, but where they show like this horde of like imps just like storming across this like kind of like. It almost looks like a desolate like battlefield. I don't know if it's on Mars or Earth or whatever the case is, but
or hell.
It's like they're actually going like all out with like demon invasion. So it's probably like it's direct to DVD, so it's gonna have like that direct to DVD feel. So it's not gonna be like this cinematic masterpiece or like with like.
But maybe, who knows?
But it's just kind of like, I think in spirit, it will be a better Doom movie than Doom 2005.
Yeah.
That seems very likely. Apparently, it follows a group of UAC Marines as they respond to distress call from a top-secret scientific base on Phobos, a Martian moon, only to discover it's been overrun by demons who threaten to create hell on Earth.
The trailer even says... The trailer says Doom Slayers Wanted. Though I think Bethesda has gone on record saying they have no hand in this movie. They are no longer involved in this film. So they kind of just don't if Bethesda was involved in making the movie, it would crash your Blu-ray player quickly.
I've heard somebody put forth the theory that Universal is simply making this so they can keep the rights to the Doom movie, which if that's the case, that makes sense.
Who knows? Maybe Doom Annihilation will give birth to another 5 Doom movies that are all actually watchable. Or maybe it will be, you know, bad. Real bad. Who knows? Only time will tell. And that's as nice as we're going to be on this episode. Marius, where can people find you if you want to be found?
They can find me in my house. Please don't.
Oh, jeez.
Mostly, they can find me in my Discord, where I hang out in pretty much 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
I do sometimes stream on Twitch, but not so much lately. But you'll find me at twitch.tv/Endsville_games and on Twitter at EndsvilleGames.
All right. And Chris?
You can find me on Twitter at xmonkeyofevil. I do occasionally stream, but we've got one new Doom game, Doom Eternal, coming out this year, and then the Doom 64 port. So for Doomcember at twitch.tv/xmonkeyofevil, there will be a whole lot of Doom action going on.
Excellent. And I'm duskvstweak everywhere online, and apart from the other shows on the Radio Meanwhile Network, I'm the co-host of the podcast The All the Book Show. Join us in upcoming episodes as we're talking about, we're talking Street Fighter very soon. So that will be fun.
Oh, no.
Past guest of the show, Nick, who is also my co-host of the All the Book Show, he's going to be on that one. He's reading the novelization of the Street Fighter movie as he's want to do.
Brave soul.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, in 1994, that was hot business. The novelization, the junior novelizations, forget about it.
The book of a movie of a game. Does the book bear as little resemblance to the movie as the movie does to the game?
No, I went through the book a little to make sure there were certain lines, and there's still the like lightning scene with M. Bison. It is basically looks like the script was just put into a novelization. It's perfect.
Fantastic.
Again, you can find more about this show and others like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Please follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Nice Things Pod, and please rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks to Prophetic Music for our theme song. See you next episode.